Hello, all you lovely people, and welcome to another enhanced edition that is, let's face it, it's basically become the Cyberverse show at this point. As of this recording, I'm still waiting on Cyberverse Adventures Deluxe Thunderhell, which means I am not done with my Cyberverse Adventures Deluxe project. It also means that I am not done with Macadam. So, unfortunately, those are just going to have to wait. But, in the meantime, I do still have other Cyberverse-y type things that I can and did paint, including, obviously, Hammerbyte. Specifically, the Deluxe Action Attacker Hammerbyte? Yes, I was right. He is the Action Attackers version, but I was wrong in that he's not a Deluxe, he's a Warrior class. But yes, Hammerbyte. I have stated previously that I really like this toy, but I also took the time to do some painting on it, and this was something that I was honestly kind of afraid to start, because looking at the toy versus the production art that I was looking at, specifically the concept art that I found, there are a lot of differences in terms of molding, and especially with the robot mode. The parts of the hammerhead are supposed to end up over top of the robot mode shoulders, but that does not happen with this toy because of the gimmick and also probably engineering limitations. There are certain bits that, like along here, there's supposed to be more exposed bits that are supposed to be like a grayish or possibly metallic-y gray, like gunmetal color. Like, there's really no space there for it. So I had to take a lot of liberties. And there are some things that I just left as is because I didn't want to risk paint rub. So I painted what I could, left some things unpainted, and just kind of had to make do with what I had. I should also say before I start going into the details, the light blue paint that I'm using is garbage. Something happened with it that just the chemistry of it, it started getting like really goopy and chunky. I painted a little bit of it here and there, and then was kind of like thinking I'm not going to paint more, and then I really wanted to finish this up, so I ended up kind of going in with enamel thinner and mixing enamel thinner into the paint a little bit in order to loosen up the chunks and kind of finish this up. But unfortunately, that means that this light blue color is basically trash now. It did not coat very well. It's kind of gunked up some of the details in a few places when, we'll see when we look at it more closely. And it's just generally been kind of horrible. So yeah, I'm gonna have to get another jar, I guess would be the appropriate term. Anyway, looking at this guy next to what the toy originally looked like, you can see that there are a fair number of bits that are painted here that do definitely help. Primarily in the hammerhead section and along the sides here, but like the tail too. The tail definitely needed some stuff. Like I said, there was some molding with this that just doesn't exist in the show model that I could use as a guide, so I kind of left some things be and painted a few other things in here and there. But I think for what it is, this mixes up the design and the color a little bit better, so it's not just like blue all the way along and then like a little bit of darker blue and gray here and there. One thing I've been noticing though, and I don't know if this is something that's happened because of time or because of the figure being outside of packaging or something to do with like sunlight being reflected into the room or something, but you might notice that some of this plastic, the blue, is starting to look a little greenish. Comparing this to this, you can see how this is kind of a little yellowy almost, and I really don't know what's causing that. We'll try and move past it. Now, in terms of the stuff that I did paint, I'm actually going to start at the back this time. So I did the gray around the base of the tail here and the metallic kind of gunmetal colors on the inside of the fin. I like how that makes that tail just a little bit more visually interesting. Unfortunately, both because the paint sucks and because this bit kind of tabs in to the inside of the leg in robot mode, I didn't want to paint that little diamond shape the light blue color, but that is supposed to be light blue. I just didn't want to risk it because of the geometry and how it transforms and the fact that the paint that I have sucks. I really wish I could have continued that gray up through the seams in the back here, but there are no seams really that are molded in for me to continue it with. So unfortunately, it just kind of is gray and then stops. I also painted the inside of the back fin here, as well as I went over the dorsal fin. I also did these bits down here because these are more like a secondary set of fins towards the back. I don't know if that's actually what these are supposed to be, but this texture is very similar to this texture, so I painted them that way to kind of give them that impression, because this guy does not match his show model exactly. There should be a secondary set of fins, like overt back here, and those are supposed to be the light blue. These are supposed to be the dark blue. For the pectoral fins, I painted in the gunmetal color there on both sides, so you can see the underside there and on the tops. It doesn't show up super well in the dark blue, but it does add a little bit more to the detailing, which I like. And then these big panels on the sides, I painted those blue, and those were time consuming. That took a couple of coats, and it turned out surprisingly well. Like when you look at it, there is some streakiness to the texture, but all things considered, I think those turned out pretty well. And I actually painted around the Autobot logo. That was a challenge, and it's not perfect, but at a glance, at a distance, I think it works out. Another thing I did was I actually painted a little bit of blue in a few areas just around the outside here. And the reason I did that is because this blue is supposed to go back kind of further, but again, the molding's not really there. So instead, I just ended up painting some of the molded bits that are there to make it look like there's less of a straight line going across here. So it just kind of brings that blue back a little bit further into the lighter blue. And I think it works. I feel like your eye isn't necessarily going to notice that those bits are painted. I'd call that a success. And then for the shark head, this whole bit along here was originally this kind of metallic-y blue color. So I went in and painted these bits in gray and these bits in light blue like they're supposed to be. You can kind of see what I was talking about with that light blue paint being very gunky and gross, and I hate it, and I tried to get it as clean as I could, but it definitely could be cleaner. I feel like at a glance you're not going to notice, so that's good enough for now. But I do like how that breaks it up a bit. I mean, I still thought that the shark mode looked fine, but that added color breakup helps so much. And then, of course, because I had to, I painted his teeth. So all of his teeth are silver, inside and out for the most part. There are some spots where I kind of had to not do the inside just because of like the angles involved. There was no way I could adequately get a brush in there, but I like how that stands out. That just looks fun. So yeah, Hammerbyte's shark mode all painted up. I think definitely benefits from the added paint. In particular, the stuff going on in the head and these panels on the sides here. It just really helps to break up that color a bit more. Now for the robot mode, this is where I spent the bulk of my time painting, and I feel like that kind of shows, especially when you look at what this thing originally looked like. Here, once again, the off-colorness of some of that plastic is apparent, though I do feel like the added bits of color all over the place kind of mask that slight discoloration a little bit better. But anyway, yeah, this guy required a fair bit of paint in this mode, and there are some liberties that I took with regards to things that I did and did not paint, because it's just because of the way this guy functions, because of the molding, because of the engineering. There are some things that don't end up where they're supposed to according to the show model, and some things that would just instantly scratch off if I tried to paint them, or would make the shark mode look wrong. But I really like how this looks. There's a lot of extra detail in the feet, the knees, the hips, the torso area, the shoulders, the forearms, the fists, the heads. So much done to this guy. Starting with the feet, I painted the toes in gray, painted this little bar going across the top in blue, and then painted the black in here. I also added a little bit of the gunmetal metallic to those knee spikes. Though this is one place where I did not add extra paint, and that's around the edges here, because these bits around the sides are meant to be this kind of blue, which I don't actually have that kind of blue for one thing, but also the molding is a little different, and because of the way this thing transforms, it would have been so much to have to kind of go around, and no. So I ended up just leaving the diamond shape and not adding the extra blue around the outsides, around the calf section. Painted in the hips black, which is difficult to tell because the legs themselves and thighs are this gray color, but I did paint the hips black. Painted the midsection in gray, as it should be. and then did a bunch to the torso. I went in here and painted these little gill-looking bits in gray. And basically the trick that I did with that was I went over it with gray and then immediately wiped it down. And then if there was any extra bit left over, I gave the paint a couple of minutes to dry and then went in with the enamel thinner and just kind of painted away the excess that came outside of those cracks. So that way, just the cracks are gray. Then, as you can tell, I also painted the teeth silver. According to the show model, the jaw should actually be this light blue color. It should not be gray. But, thing is, according to the show model itself, the actual jaw of the shark down here is still gray, like the rest of, like the dark gray, like the rest of the head. So if this jaw is supposed to be the lower jaw of the shark mode, even though it's that turquoise color in the show, if it's gray here, it should also be gray here. So that was my justification for not painting the jaw itself. That and the fact that because of the gimmick and all that, I didn't want to try and get that intricate with it. So yes, I totally was like, I'm going to be lazy and not paint the jaw, but I still feel like realistically, when you're thinking in terms of how the shark looks in the show versus how the robot looks in the show, I feel like this needed to be gray anyway. So yeah, left it gray, then painted the teeth in silver, and I really like how that looks. And for the arms, there's a lot that I did to the arms. I painted in the fingers black, as they're meant to be. Did that all around, like where the actual fingers are. Painted the spikes just above his knuckles silver, and then painted the little bits leading up to the spikes the darker blue. Again, to match the show accuracy, painted the forearm sections in here silver. Another hard thing to see, but I painted that little bit right on the bicep there black. And now these shoulders. This was also a process because these whole shoulders are actually this dark gray color of the bicep, but these bits I painted in the darker blue because they're supposed to be, and then I was going to leave it at that, but I really did want this guy to look more complete. Plus I felt like bringing that turquoisey color, the light blue, I keep saying turquoise, the light blue color, I feel like bringing that in a few extra places would have been beneficial. So that's when I watered down the paint, so to speak, and went back in with the crappy paint and did the shoulders up. I left these unpainted because that's where the flaps for the legs peg in, and I didn't want to risk any paint rub there, but yeah, I kind of painted around that. And that light blue absolutely does not match the light blue anywhere else, but I still think it kind of works. Like, it's similar enough in tone, and it does at least bring this light blue into the robot mode a bit. So I'm okay with that. And one other thing I forgot to mention with the legs, I actually painted these bits on the sides here gray, but only the parts that are facing forward. I did not paint these bits on the back because there's just so much in the way there that I was worried I was going to get paint all over the place. But those are meant to evoke his fins that are on his legs. And again, according to the show model, there's some inconsistencies here because going by the robot mode as per the concept art, these fins on his forearms are supposed to be light blue and these fins on his legs are supposed to be dark blue. But I left these light blue and I left these dark blue for the sake of the shark mode. Essentially, my thinking is these dark blue fins are not supposed to be dark blue in the robot, but they are dark blue on the shark. So these kind of more evoke the light blue fins that were here towards the back of the shark mode. So that way he still has one pair of dark blue fins, one pair of light blue fins in both modes. Not entirely show accurate, but this figure itself is not entirely show accurate. It's like, again, the biggest issue with this, aside from some of the molding, is the fact that the hammer bits of the shark head are actually supposed to be sticking up over his shoulders back here, and it can't do that because the toy is just not engineered that way. As for the head, I did actually add a little bit more to the head as well. I went in with the gray, similar to what I did for the little gill slits on the torso there, and I did some gray on the vents on the sides of the helmet, gray in those little crevices along the trident design, and then dark blue in that little center of the forehead thing, because again, going for show accuracy. I don't entirely know if the head crest is supposed to be yellow or gold. I think just yellow, but I also wasn't about to repaint the entire head crest, so I just left it at yellow. But I like how that mixes things up just a little bit more, because the head originally was the light blue plastic for the helmet, the yellow for the crest, and then the white for the face, and that's it. And I feel like just getting a little bit more of that gray in there to make some of those details pop, and a little bit of that dark blue goes a long way. And it still does that thing I like with head sculpts, where you get one color that you don't see anywhere else on the figure with that head crest, though I guess you do actually get some of that down here, so I'm a liar. But still, it's not much. You don't get much yellow in the figure, so that does help to kind of stand out with the head. And yeah, before I finish things up entirely, let me bring this up, because I do want to point out that the Gimmick still works just fine in this mode. Just pull that down, and now he's got his shark stylings. As far as I can tell, it doesn't, like, none of the paint is actually affected. This doesn't bang into the shoulders because the shoulders don't come in close enough, and this doesn't come out far enough. The teeth don't actually bump into anything. All the stuff painted here is still safe. These teeth are fine. He still looks weird in this mode, but I do like it, and I think the Gimmick is fun, and I like the fact that I'm not really afraid to continue using the Gimmick even after painting him. So there we have that, and there we have Transformers Bumblebee Cyberverse Adventures Action Attackers Warrior Class Hammerbyte. Too many words. But yes, I love this figure, as I said many times before, but like with the added paint, it looks so much better. Again, I was nervous about doing it because I knew I was going to have to really dig in and come up with, like, you know, what do I paint, what do I not paint, how do I paint it so that it's not going to rub against other stuff? Will I have to be careful with a lot of stuff? Will there be other limitations I have to deal with? It was a project, just in terms of like really having to think before committing paint to the figure. It was a really interesting exercise, and again, I really like how it looks now that there's just a little bit more color on this guy. Considering this figure is like roughly around 15 bucks, I'd say if you want a fun shark transforming toy, get it. And then if you want a worthwhile painting project that's going to look great when you're done, also get it and then paint it. Of course, I'm probably partial to my own work, so what do you all think of Hammerbyte here after he's been touched up? Whatever your thoughts, feel free to chime in down below. I always enjoy hearing from you all. Thank you for watching, and please, stay fabulous.